Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
Marvel TV is back, and we have Agatha Harkness. She finally got her own show. The pipeline had kind of stopped up, but they got the road out, and they finally got this series out there. While the other things been put on the shelf, we finally get to see that after their first, I think, pretty much successful series of Scarlet Witch. This was announced, and the idea of Vision was announced, and I think that's also still in play. But we finally got this. We had the big fight at the end, so we'll see where Agatha is now, if it has any ties to old TV.
Another beautiful day.
Surprised to see you out here, detective.
What?
Jane Doe, found her down here by the water.
What
Cause?
has happened?
Blunt force trauma.
I think I put the wrong show on.
What happened to you? I have a lead in the case, but can't shake this feeling I'm seeing it wrong.
Is this really how you see yourself? That witch is gone, leaving you trapped in her distorted spell. Claw your way out.
I miss the glory days. She took every bit of power I had, but I can beat that witch again. Well, the gang's all here. Let's hit the road. I'm gonna walk the witch's road. The road is a death wish. Join me. What witch in her right mind would join Agatha Harkness's coven? Not looking for right-minded witches, as it happens.
Sweetheart, you okay?
Oh my God! Whoa, what's she doing? Where's she going?
Here we go. What do you say?
I don't know. I had interest in seeing this when WandaVision was still pretty fresh in my mind, and now it's been so much time, I can't say that I have the same interest. And based on the trailer, I don't have any trust in what these guys are trying to execute. If the whole storyline is supposed to be she's trying to get back her powers, I'm not interested.
Hmm. I mean, the hard part is Agatha Harkness is kind of a character like Blade, where there wasn't, she basically was somewhere to shuttle Franklin off, so he'd be out of the story for a while and he'd be protected. And they found a couple other things for her to do, and so they have a cipher to kind of play with. Obviously, she was older, so they could play to that. That's a simple character trait to play to, but they've thrown all that out. So they're doing everything they want to do. They have the Coven thing. They might obviously they show that Wanda Maximoff is still passed away, is still dead. So you get to play with the Scarlet Witch, and maybe there's some other colored witches like the Green Lanterns. And but I have to agree. Well, actually, I wasn't with the Scarlet Witch and Vision, and this is a lot weirder. But I will say, Aubrey Plaza kind of is a draw. So I would possibly want to see it for that. Obviously, they also trying to poke fun at, what is it, the Ring or something like that at the end. And so there'll be some callbacks to other horror stuff and other movies and bits like that, and maybe even the American, Marvel's American Horror Story. So it seems like it can have all of that and a little bit of the flavor of what's that thing, of WandaVision, but at the same time, not sure that I'm going to stick with it. But they better have a lot of Aubrey Plaza in the beginning, so I can try to latch on, because that'd be the character I'd latch on to. Even though I do like, what was it, the black girl from she used to be on SNL. She was always pretty good on there. I think she was when they needed someone and they got someone, and Neil Brennan was capping for Saturday Night Live, saying, "I see the tapes. I saw the audition tapes, so I understand why." And she was good in pretty much at all the sketches they were doing. So she's also good. So I mean, obviously it looks like a talented cast. But at the same time, I do have to agree with Cal that there is some things. The approach, what's the name? I forget the Mayor Town or the Last True Detective or something like that. Any of the procedural type of things. This kind of open here is just kind of filler, and have alone they play with this portion. If it's not the same couple of seconds or 30 seconds that it's here in this, I can't see myself sitting the whole episode, getting to the end of it and saying, "Find yourself," just to see Aubrey Plaza at the very end. If that's what the first episode is like, if it's not just the first 15 minutes, I will be back on here complaining. But I don't know. With this is just a little hypothetical. This isn't really what I think Marvel should have done first. If there are any comic book TV properties that they have that you would have rather see them do rather than this. The only thing I know or remember is Vision Quest. Was there anything that you would think of that you'd rather see them do first?
There's plenty of stuff that I can think of, but nothing I trust them to do.
Well, just hypothetically, if they would do it right.
I could have done the hypotheticals, 4 years ago. It's been too much trash at this point, for me to do anything. Because like, okay, this is some stuff I would like to see you do. Are you going to do it? No, you're going to do this stuff with, we're going to have again, this is the same thing that people have been moaning about for the last few years. It's going to be an all-girl show. It's going to be about, in quotes, reclaiming your power. I've already seen enough witch stuff with the Acolyte. And then like, why am I tuning into this? Agatha Harkness this is not a character from the comic. This is a character that was introduced in your TV series, and that TV series was introduced. How long ago was it? It might have been as much as 4 years.
Yeah,
it might have been as much as 4 years ago that you introduced the character. So now, like, okay, hypothetically, who's somebody that you would think of that? Okay, who would you like to see get a TV series? A bunch of people I could probably come up with who I think are those more maybe second, third tier heroes who I think would actually get a nice shine, but they keep showing me this. So every character that they get is somehow going to be pushed or funneled into this particular mode. It'll be very female centered. It'll have these particular themes that, to be quite honest, I'm tired of. And I shrug my shoulders like, why should I be interested in this? If it was connected to the other series, that was 4 years ago. Why am I coming back for more of this? So that's where I am with that. And I don't have it, to be very frank, I don't have any trust in them. They have screwed up for 4 years.
Yeah.
And they don't look like they want to right the ship with their audience. They are going full steam ahead at trying to create the Marvel Universe in their own image. And by that, I mean Disney, as opposed to what the Marvel Universe is from, that was established with the comic. So, like, hey, you don't need to watch a film. You can just watch this stuff over here, and we don't have to have any synergy with the comic or anything of that nature, which is fine. But the stuff that you've been doing for the last 4 years sucks. So that's the bigger issue. But no, I just don't trust them. So
yeah,
I can't give my mind over to creating any sort of hypothetical, because that's wasted energy on my part, because they're not going to do it.
Well, it's definitely. You're not looking at Will Smith and Martin Lawrence or Tom Cruise, where you can pick back up, or even a James Bond, where you can pick back up in the franchise and say, hey, we haven't done a Sean Connery James Bond movie. We're gonna do never say never again. You can't pick up and get someone to. You can't get people usually to greenlight something like that. And Marvel's going on this. Well, she was kind of. Well, I don't know if she was in my mind. I think going back to just a touch on WandaVision, even though I did struggle with it, I do feel that the actors, Agatha included, all pulled out all the stops, even though they weren't in the jokey sitcom setting. There were no one-liners that kind of landed for me. They've outperformed the material. So obviously, the actress who plays Agatha Harkness, and she's been on TV, I believe on SNL also. She is a talent. So you can get her into something that would be good and it could work out. But the first thing, they didn't have anything that one-liners that work. That performers had to really kill themselves with the material. This is like it seemed like a half-gas American Horror Story. So it's kind of like we don't even have her own identity. She goes, picks up a crew, and then she goes out and has her own coven. So have even like the coven or any of those other witch stories, trying to have it packed all in there. And then they also, threw in the guy in there. So it's, we have the new age type of thing. And there we go. We got our series. So it's, outside of saying, for me, the hypothetical saying, obviously, Vision Quest and trying to figure out Vision, but at the same time,
Who is the series for? Here was the series for. That's the main thing. Because I'm looking at this, and you have, okay, you have, you have Catherine Hahn from playing Agatha Harkness. So maybe some of the people who liked WandaVision will trip back over. But then you have all these other avenues. You have a coven, okay? You have one guy. This guy's gay. Okay, so I'm asking, okay, so who are you trying to draw in? This is not, you're not trying to draw in some guys who would be interested to see if there's somehow maybe some of the comic stories, get played out here. So who is the audience that you're trying to pull in with this? Because effectively, this is like Girls Trip with magic. So who's the audience, and why is this a Marvel project? These are the things that go through. And I'm like, well, and then it becomes like, why do I want to watch this? I'm somebody who, grew up reading comics, love the Marvel universe, and then you're taking one of these characters, you're probably creating a whole bunch of your own as well. What exactly is supposed to be going on here that I would be interested in? Oh, you're not creating this for me. You're creating this for someone else. But who's that audience is what normally I'm thinking. And I don't know if that audience even exists, but they keep making these shows.
Well, that would be the thing is because they do usually pull from the Marvel universe. The problem is that none of these characters are recognizable. So, say the only thing I can think of in what was it, Doctor Strange? I think her name was Topaz, but I don't know if she was just someone that worked with Wong. And there was a blonde that was in that wasn't Claire, who obviously has white hair. So they usually try to pull. So it's interesting to see, not interesting, but I'm in a wary way, saying kind of I don't know who these characters are or who they're gonna make them into, but because obviously in She-Hulk they had Mr. Immortal that didn't look anything like Mr. Immortal. Mr. Immortal was more like like a curly, like not exactly a little more country version of William Katz, a little wild kind of curly hair type of deal. It's supposed to be from the 1920s, but we didn't, they didn't get to reveal that as it came along, and they turned him into older, long, tall white guy. So it's just like, come on, this guy, he actually looks like he has a lot of character in his face in the drawing that we have. So it's not interesting, but I'd be surprised to see who these characters are. I definitely hear you. It's also, but we also the last thing, which obviously is
but that's the thing where I would be like, why are you interested in seeing these characters? What have you seen so far that gives you that particular interest? Then maybe I would be interested too. But as of right now, I don't. I'm like, why would you be interested in it? What have you seen so far within this trailer that piques your interest?
Mm-hmm. So, what do you mean? Let's go. We have to go above because we have in Star Wars we have Kathleen Kennedy, in Marvel we have Kevin Feige. Above them is mostly guys, right? The top shareholders. Why are they picking this stuff? Why are they
Exactly.
deciding that this is the thing? Are they doing focus groups and saying this is what the people want, and they're struggling at TV? And it's like, why aren't they taking what they want? We're giving them what they want, and they won't accept it, or is it just we need to try to get this? We try to make this audience on the fly. I'm at either or, however you want to answer it.
Again, the question stands. If these guys are making these decisions, like, okay, who are you making these decisions for? Who's the audience that's supposed to be lapping this up? Because they're not, but you keep making this a particular decision. And if your interest is somehow piqued, what are you seeing that piques your interest? I mean, I've seen enough films where they would throw in some hot chicks because they were like, hey, we can get the guys in just because they want to come over here and gaga over this particular girl, because she's the it girl, that sort of thing. All right, but this isn't that. So I'm like, okay, so you're not trying to get guys in here. This really looks to be, all intents and purposes, looks like you're trying to direct this towards a female audience. But you keep doing this, and the female audience is not coming out for this stuff. So who's the audience, and why do you keep doing it? And then those people I would love to ask, and please feel free to leave it in a comment. If you're looking at this and you're interested in it, well, what about what you've seen in the trailer? Or what are the expectations or the hopes that you have for the series that are piquing your interest? Because that would help me to plug in it. Because for the last 4 years, it's been all over the place. It's been very hard to predict what people will like, what people are going to turn away from.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also, I think the stuff that's worked is really, hard to mess up. Like the Falcon and Winter Soldier, the Hawkeye stuff. They weren't, setting new ground, building up anything different. It was in their wheelhouse to do something similar to that, not necessarily the Russos would do, but in that wheelhouse of what would be workable. Loki, I think a lot of people like that, but it was not necessarily Loki, unless you believe at the end of, I guess it's Infinity War, that Loki would have like a midlife crisis and want to work.
Loki wouldn't have a midlife crisis. These guys like Tom Hiddleston. They don't like the character Loki. They just were like, hey, I want to see Tom Hiddleston, and I'll watch anything that Tom Hiddleston is in, which is fine. You've got your audience right there. You know who it's for, and it's working. You're getting your numbers. You're getting your people out. That's perfectly fine. I don't necessarily like the decision. I don't necessarily like the decisions that were made, and I don't recognize that character. But what you're doing is successful, and you have your target audience, and you're meeting your target. No big deal. It's the other stuff. Because not every show has Tom Hiddleston on it, and this is one of them.
Yeah. Well, that's also what a lot of non-comic book people, because they're just so drawn to it. And I was like, yes, it's okay. It's kind of not taking the stuff that they could do with the TVA and whatnot, and kind of utilizing it. But I guess it's okay. But there are people really into that, and they were into Sylvie, which was such a non-Loki character. And it's also tough because reading that Norse God by Neil Gaiman and Craig P.R. Russell, and they were just doing the straight original stories, and Loki's just hilarious. And then everyone would bring up, well, Loki had sex with a horse or whatever. It's like, well, he also changed to the horse and then had. It's a distinction. It's not just interspecies. Like he's messing. He's just messing around. Like he's just out there in the wild doing crazy stuff. It's not for you to join in and say, I'm going to link up with this person because I think he's cool. Like, no, he's not going to side with you. If you have a group and say, hey, he's non-gender specific like us, and you're going to see the group and say, what a bunch of lames. Let's see how I can mess with these guys and get some life out of them. That's the Loki reaction to stuff. He don't sit around there making friends. The whole, the Simpson thing was like, it was fun to him to go. So Michaela, go with this guy. I'm going to go with this guy, even though it's going to end to the end of the world. And then close to the end of the world, it's like, hey, I got to fight back. It's the end of the world. He's like, and he said it for myself. Like that's
Well,
what.
yeah, that was that classic, the nice splash that we got in, what was that, Thor 351, for
Yeah.
Odin, for Asgard, for myself. It's like, yeah, that's
So,
that's that's Loki's character, and the idea of when I saw when I saw the first one, and it was like, okay, and there's another Loki out here. Loki from the comics would have never stood for that. He'd be like, what do you mean there's multiples of me? Absolutely not. He would have the entire thing. I thought the premise would have been he's like, I'm taking all of these guys out. There's just me. This turns into, I mean, it turns into the first season was almost like a therapy session,
yeah, exactly
for this
it.
character, and they didn't want to see him like, no, Loki's a bad guy. At the best, you can get some anti-hero stuff out of him, but he's a bad guy. He's there to beset Thor. And for the people who would go and read the stuff that was wonderfully, beautifully illustrated by P. Craig Russell, Loki's a god. Okay, they can do whatever they want. Okay, they can do whatever they want. So if Loki wants to change into a female horse to lure the other horse away, and then somehow is pregnant later on, that makes for a good story. But he can do whatever he wants. So when they're trying to somehow equate that with, oh look, he's I can't even say the word, but when they're trying to equate that, you seem to they don't take into account this is a god, small g, and they can do pretty much whatever they want. These things aren't massively important, okay, or massively difficult for them to accomplish. That being said, again, Tom Hiddleston has this, they liked him, they wanted to put him in something, fans wanted to see him in this. Okay. With the other stuff they've been doing, including this with Agatha Harkness, it's just a big question mark. I don't know if this is where, like, okay, well, then when 10 years we'll have cultivated the audience that we want, and these people in 10 years, these guys will remember this and they'll remember it fondly, and then we'll have our own established Marvel universe, which will definitely counter with the comic. So, they're really trying to, create two different things.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a strategy. If so, that's a very good long game, or rather, that's not a very good long game, but it's a very long game. And I don't know how successful it'll be. But in the meantime, I'm here living this in real time, wondering what's going on and whether or not I should give any of these shows my attention.
Yeah, and then thinking about it, because it's what was it? Going back to Agatha Harkness, the big sort of storyline was the people in her area, the warlocks. Obviously, you don't need to bring in Franklin to have her being the protector of this land and these warlocks and these other things, and the Salem Seven, which obviously is a little like very colorful, but in having these characters that have all these powers, you could play with that in the like the same with Blade, where you keep the powers, just figure a costume that would be cool for TV, and you have a bunch of adversaries for her to deal with. Not to say that she's gonna be fighting them toe to toe, but having something, and you get to do here's another group. Here's another group you can make some action figures or do some more movies with, but it is akin to something that you were saying, that they're not really interested in cultivating a cool set of villains or characters, or even the Eternals, where the Eternals are kind of left in shambles when they attacked them.
How committed are you to cultivating villains when you kill off the Red Skull in the very first movie?
Yeah, yeah, and this other aspect of saying, because I don't know, do they think they're gonna, while these characters are still around, even though they'll probably reboot at some point, do you think that the audience is gonna cry foul when you bring back the Red Skull? Because nobody cried foul when when Mark Grunwald brought back the Red Skull. Nobody cried foul. Like, there was no. He had I think maybe there's a couple people. He had such a great death in was it Captain America 300 or something like that? Yeah, I didn't really think. I was like, why would you do that? Like, I understand villains die all the time, but a permanent death for a cool villain, no. And Cap and back to what you're saying, Cap and the Red Skull didn't have their final battle, or any of the classic stories that they had of Skull having the thing and basically can do everything, which is basically the plot that they used for Secret Wars. He can do anything, but in his procrastination leaves an opening for Cap. Actually, it was more is done well, way better in the Cap story, and he loses it and he falls to his death in that story and somehow survives. So it's like we want him back. So my passion, and when you bring it up, is that definitely, I agree. So, I guess that's about it. Any other last words?
Just standing confused.
Sorry, say that again.
As usual, I'm just standing confused at these decisions.
Yeah. Well said. This is definitely a hard one. Spinner rack.